Last night we saw West Ham United go down to the South Coast to take on Bournemouth in the Premier League, and what do you know, they shared a point apiece. It was 1-1 in the end. West Ham went ahead in the 88th minute, and it looked as if they would win it when Paqueta converted a controversial penalty kick, but Bournemouth took a point thanks to a stunning free kick. Unal got it in stoppage time. Post-match, for what it was worth, Iraola was unhappy from Bournemouth's point of view about the awarding of the West Ham penalty.
It's not the correct decision. I'm very, very disappointed because it's a play that we talked about before the start of the season with the meeting with the referees. I particularly personally complained, and I asked because they told us, we don't want you to tell your players to defend with your hands at the back. I told them, we will continue to give these orders because you are calling the penalties. They told us, no, don't worry, that if it's a natural position, we will not call these kind of things. We don't want football to become another thing and start seeing what they're seeing, the defenders defending with the hands at the back. Okay, first time that happens, boom, and we get punished. So I'm very, very disappointed.
So he's very disappointed. He says, Simon, it's something of a grey area. We'll get back to that in a moment, because Iraola strikes me as the sort of guy that wouldn't voice a complaint if he didn't think that there was relevance in it. And I know he's the aggrieved manager in this instance.
There'll be an official position, and we'll establish that in a second as to what the guidelines are officially.
Yeah.
What he's doing is referring to hearsay. And I've been in conversations that I recall very differently to the way that the other person recalls them. So let's get the official position rather than the hearsay, and then establish it from there, because ultimately what was said to you and what the official guidelines are should be the same thing. And we'll never know, because we don't know who he had the conversation with specifically and explicitly, and what interpretation he took about it and what their side of the equation is. Because if the official guidelines are you defend with your arms behind your back, then he's got not much of a leg to stand on, has he?
No, exactly. But in general terms, looking at it, Forest are 4th, Bournemouth are 6th, Fulham are 8th. Are we seeing the rise of traditional middle-of-the-way clubs such as Fulham, Brentford, Forest, Bournemouth this season? Are we talking about European football now being a realistic prospect for some of those clubs I've just mentioned?
One hopes so, because the idea that the Premier League is losing its competitive nature because it's becoming an anti-competitive league is not something that's particularly appealing. And by that I mean, we don't want 3 teams coming up and 3 teams going down. We don't want the same teams winning the league. We don't want the same teams competing at the top end of the league, because that will kill the golden goose, because it will lose the resonance that it has around the world. So if we are seeing the rise of lesser clubs, because PSR is levelling out the opportunity for the bigger clubs not to have to abide by certain governance, i.e. they've got rich benefactors that can bankroll the difference between what they can afford and what they want to have, of their own economics. My gut feel is that we will see the top 6 be the top 6, and maybe you'll have one potential outlier like an Aston Villa. And if you think Aston Villa as a huge football club should be categorised as an outlier, given its heritage and size, then that may well be the case. I would be very surprised, and I hope to be wrong, irrespective of Marinakis' claims and the fact that his team now are doing that well, if you see a Nottingham Forest, or you see a Fulham, or if you see a Brentford inside the top 4. That would be brilliant.
Right.
It would be fabulous. I don't think it will be that way.
So you think, Simon, ambition can only take these kind of clubs so far?
Well, there's not so much ambition, because all clubs will be ambitious. You start every season with an ambition. If you go up from the Championship, you're ambitious enough to stay in the Premier League. If you start the season as Brentford, you're ambitious to push into the top 10, the top 6, Palace, etc., and so on and so forth. The economics of the way that the game is now structured, is it a good thing? Do we want benefactors being able to bankroll football clubs irrespective of the consequences if they lose their appetite for it? Possibly, possibly not. The way that PSR governs you, I had this conversation about Newcastle. How do Newcastle overcome teams whose turnover is £300 million bigger than theirs? Well, they win on the field. How do they win on the field? They buy better players. How can they buy better players if they can't afford them because PSR prohibits them from doing it? Well, they sell their younger players, which is what Eddie Howe was complaining about the other day. It's a challenge that football's going to have to work its way through. Either you want a league which is very competitive, which has been open for business for every kind of money all around the world, creating new opportunities for clubs, and Newcastle being the latest club of the rank that can't bridge this gap because they can't buy their way to the top like Man City and Chelsea did. So, look, it might level it. It means good coaching becomes part of it. It becomes utilisation of players and making players better becomes part of it. I still think that you'll see the conventional side, with maybe the odd exception, dictating what happens in the league, and the same top 6 will be in the top 6. And United languishing in 13th and Tottenham languishing in 11th.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I suspect will change by the end of the season.
They've got a bit to do, though, haven't they?
They do have a bit to do, which makes the game on Thursday fascinating, because you've got two managers that have got two cultures. You've got the culture of Manchester United that needs to change, because it's been once upon a time the poster boy of how to win things, and you've got the culture of Spurs that's been forever this way, apparently, which is Spursy. And you've got two managers railing against it. You've got what's his face at Man United, Amorim, coming in there going, this culture at Manchester United needs to go back to what it was before.
Yeah.
And you've got Ange Postecoglou going, I don't accept this culture. I don't accept the idea that Spurs has got a mentality. So that makes it a fascinating dichotomy of opportunities.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. A fascinating dichotomy of opportunities.
Okay.
But when you boil it down, it is bloody brilliant. Forest in the mix, Bournemouth in the mix, Fulham in the mix.
Yes, it is. And it tells you a lot about the kind of coaches that they've got in there.
Yeah.
Because these
exactly.
coaches, I mean, Nuno Espirito Santo, wasn't the right fit for Tottenham Hotspur. And, I do know that he can be a bit of a divisive character at times, specifically if you're an owner. But he has produced a very good side at Nottingham Forest that's punching very heavily, I think, above its weight right now. And long may it continue to do so. I mean, you wouldn't pick Chris Wood as your natural goal scorer at the top end of the Premier League right now, but he is. Everything he hits goes in the back of the net.
Right.
And so right now, Nottingham Forest are operating at a very high level.
Sure.
I would suspect that this will change and when the European competition recedes a little bit, and they're not playing so many European games, you might see again the conventional orthodoxy of the top sides regaining some of their poise and winning games that have been previously lost due to the fact they're committed in other areas.
Okay.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.